Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Fear It Goes. So happy to have you here. Today, we are here with Matt Kelemen. His story is, as always, an interesting one because honestly, let's be real here. I find their stories so motivating, inspiring, and thought-provoking. They take me on a journey that helps me expand myself and appreciate other people around me. So I hope you enjoy the interviews and the stories that come along through this podcast as much as I do. And I hope you get as much from the information that we share here as I do. And with no further ado, welcome to today's podcast. Welcome to Fear It Goes, the podcast all about taking your fears with you and doing it anyway. I'm your host, Brandy Taylor. I want to welcome you to today's podcast, Matt. I'm so grateful that you have joined us here today at Fear It Goes. How are you?
Hi, Brandy. How are you?
Oh, so good, so good. Such a pleasure to have you here.
Very excited to be here, Brandy.
I want to talk about your journey through adolescence, and because I find it really fascinating and really insightful into how people make a leap in their life. So you came from a single parent and a life that was tougher early on.
Yeah, life, for what I remember clearly about being young, because certainly, finding all of the pieces again is an interesting process in and of itself. But being young, growing up, I had a lot of what I would call personal freedom, and that came to me from different circumstances. I have wonderful, beautiful parents for sure, but I grew up with my mother and my sister, who was 6 years younger than me, and my parents had been separated since about the time that I was 1 year of age. And so very strong feminine environment. Growing up, I became very sensitive, and I think perhaps I've always just been naturally sensitive, but I found that even as a very young person, I was always very careful about the feelings of others and trying not to disturb the mood or disturb the setting or create any kind of friction inside of my house, which felt almost too easy to do sometimes.
And why did you feel you needed to do that?
I guess it just felt safer to do that. I felt like whether it was myself personally being attacked or as if like I was being the attacker, I felt like being expressive or open or in some cases even just feeling whatever I was feeling, that this was in some way creating chaos, right? It was making a mess where there didn't need to be one. I remember pretty distinctively just living as a young person, feeling pretty, call it shy at first, but what it really was, it was shy to other people, but what it really was this, I guess you could say, like, lack of confidence, or even it turned into a lack of capability in just giving a voice to what I was feeling.
Do you think you were just kind of holding back because you were afraid?
Yeah, more than anything, that's exactly what it turned into, for sure. And the fear of it, I could reach back and associate it with specific things, like I didn't want to upset my mother by bringing the wrong mood into the house, or I didn't want to upset my teachers or whatever by being obnoxious or telling them how bored I was or whatever. But I got, suffice to say, the important part of the story is that I got very introspective at a very young age, and I spent a lot of time alone. And that's kind of the baseline of my journey, is that, yeah, I was a pretty contemplative fellow.
It's interesting too, because you took on that role of caregiver and people pleaser very young, super concerned about others, very, very young.
Yeah, I learned very early on to kind of watch and weigh the effects of my behavior on other people, for sure. Um, that is essentially like turned into a massive gift in my life now, to be certain. But I was always very like hyper aware of the impact that was had when I would speak, when I would laugh, when I would sit quietly and observe. And for a while there, it was the scary part was that I didn't know what was going to happen. I got a little bit nervous and maybe predisposed to imagine that the reaction would be negative, that I would get in trouble, or I would be told not to do that. And so I didn't. I took more to an observational role, which allowed me to see very clearly, like to a minute detail, what kind of impact my behavior had on other people and my surroundings, and comparing that kind of experiment to plants and to animals and people. It was interesting to see where my communication felt safer and more authentic. Um, but yeah, it was very watchful, critical thinking kind of a road for me as a young person, for sure.
It's amazing, actually, and very honestly quite rare. Most kids and many of us into adulthood don't follow that path of the observer. Most of us are quite asleep.
Yeah, and certainly there's elements there were elements of that too, for sure. I looking back on it now, I feel like I almost didn't have a choice in the matter. It was just me doing what felt or seemed best at the time. Um, and I was always very, very high energy. Like just you ask my parents about what kind of infant I was, and they'll tell you that I was crazy. Like I just moving, going all the time, tons of energy. And and certainly, like, if I look back and try to put a story together about being a young person, a young boy growing up, I could certainly say that, like, I always had what felt like too much energy, and it was it was something that I felt like I had to temper, and that took me through some very, very difficult trials um, as a kid, and even today it's a big part of my life, but one that I'm very empowered by speaking about and getting involved with and sharing, which is what I didn't do as a young person. So
Well, and you're now at this stage, you know how to utilize that energy and be able to kind of gift it out through yourself to others. I find high energy people have a charisma, a charm, a persona that is unique. Well, we all have relatively unique personas, but there's something about high energy, and you're gifting it to others in most cases. In most cases, it's rare that someone will find that too much in their own space and then they shut down or they look for escape.
right.
But yeah, usually it's something people seek out.
Yeah, yeah, I've been there before too. Like, you dampen your own energy, long enough, and certainly you're going to feel lack of some kind. And this, I think, leads to searching or seeking in all types of ways. And this is actually the part of my story that makes me feel very relatable to lots of people. I think a lot of people are, in general, I think people are full of limitless energy, or at least have access to
Yeah.
it, and that can be utilized for anything at all. But like, through my journey, I'm able to relate to certain kinds of oppression and certain kinds of dampening that occurs, whether that's just within the psyche or whether that's in the environment or both, that really leads to this externalization of of reality, you might say, where you're always looking for something that's going to fix you, or looking for something that's going to wake you up, or looking for something that's going to bring that energy back.
Even though it's always been there and it's never left.
Right,
It's
absolutely.
yeah. It's just we've buried ourselves under the external, not realizing that everything is already there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. So, and that's always the story of coming home or coming back to yourself, or
Yeah.
Yeah. So, mine was very, very similar story to those kinds of themes in many ways, for sure.
Well, we talked about your experience as a teen and talking about suppression and oppression. You felt that way in your teens, and what that had done. What had that done to your psyche? What had that done to your energy? So, this great energy source, this ball of beautiful, expansive energy, dampened and darkened.
Yeah, I think it came through in many ways. I remember when I was younger, so becoming a teenager, I was very artistic in many ways. It just kind of shone through. And as I got into my teenager years, I definitely that basically attached to perceived rejection started to just become removed from my life. I stopped drawing, I stopped writing, I stopped singing, like all these things I love to do. I just stopped doing them, and I got a lot more wrapped up in the people pleasing aspect of my character for a while. And when you feel like your expression is too much, then artistic expression's probably not the safest way to please people. So that was part of the dampening for sure.
It's not
But
just dampening, that's absolutely a suppression of us in our highest self, us in
right,
our most authentic self is when we are joyful and in bliss. And when you're creating, it is blissful. It's us aligned with all of our parts of ourselves when we're creating.
mm,
So you literally stopped creating in singing, in writing, in doing whatever drawings you used to do. All
right.
those components of creating were pushed aside for an ego-based role of people pleasing. Wow. Sorry, it just dawned on me exactly what just transpired. And I'm like, wow, you literally dropped out of yourself to go into learning as a teen.
Yeah, I
That's a
guess
tough one.
that's yeah. It was the dark night of the soul, right? There's lots of references to that, and we've all got a story to
Yeah.
share like that for sure, right? And that those years, junior high and high school, and right after high school, those were pretty dark nights for sure. Um, yeah, it carried on, and the longer something goes on, the longer you feel like that's a reality, or you call that your reality, the more powerful it gets. That detachment from artistic or creative expression, got very, very strong, and it got replaced by this just general anger, I think. Because it's all the same energy, right? So you're going to transmute it one way or another, because you can only resist like being alive so much while you're alive. Like this, the energy is going to come through. It's got nowhere else to go. So essentially, the more that happened, the more withdrawn I got, the more I simply watched and didn't engage. The more video games I got to like suck me dry, and the more,
Escapism.
yeah, like big time. And I've come full circle on that. I've got some great gratitude for some of those things now. But the more that I did that, the less that I talked to my parents about anything. I went into this blame mode where I certainly started for a little while there, like kind of blaming all of my circumstances on other people and situations that I couldn't control, and that became a voice for the anger that was really just creative energy that hadn't been allowed its natural outlets. And I got wrapped up in romantic ideas, and I was hoping that would be an outlet for creative uh, energy. And whenever rejection came to me in that world, that was just devastating, and that reinforced this idea that no, like, go be alone, just watch, like that's what you're supposed to do. Uh,
The
so
ideas that go through our head.
I tell you, yeah, and they become a lot more than ideas after a while, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely they do. Because
Yeah,
we've repeatedly told ourselves this is the way it is when it really isn't.
that's
It
right.
really isn't.
Hmm. So yeah, there was some very very difficult days. I remember times for sure getting so angry, just so angry, and typically video games became the needle or the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. Where I would use this device, this game, as a means to try and express something creatively, and because I couldn't control it perfectly, it would give my anger a strong outlet at that point. And sometimes the dam would be so built up that when the anger finally released, it was very destructive. Like I went through a period as a teenager where I broke a lot of things. I used to hit myself in the head really hard sometimes because I had nothing else that I could do, and I'd already broken enough things. I didn't want to break anything else, so I would just hurt myself.
Aw.
But that's something that like not a lot of people know anything about, right? Like these like dark secrets, so to speak, they're buried there. But that's also where the healing comes through as well. So being able to talk about it is important.
Empowering the disempowerments.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You got it. How about that?
Empower the disempowerments, the disempowering moments in our life, how important it is to go back and empower them and
Mhm.
acknowledge what we draw from them, which is an empowerment in itself. Instead of just seeing it as this detrimental, horrible experience, there is always something that we draw from that experience, and that's why we have it.
Right.
And it's so fascinating to me listening to you talk about suppression and how suppression manifested in so many ways, suppression of self, and how it manifested in anger and self, like not mutilation, but hurting yourself, and
Hmm.
the path that you go down and how much more and more extreme it becomes or could become, or to what end it goes due to a suppression of self.
Right.
And when we get so caught up in the ego and learning that we don't recognize that that's what we're doing is we're learning something, and we've forgotten that that's what we're doing is learning. This isn't who we are.
Hmm.
I'm I'm in the midst of my own little thing right now. Last few months have been kind of an up and down, interesting space in my own head. But it all kind of came to a head in conversation last night, and that's what I realized is that when we wear our ego too long, we forget who we are and what we're drawing from the ego experience,
Hmm.
what we get to gain from the experience of being an ego, which is learning something. And there is always a lesson when we're in ego, always a lesson. And that is a massive gift. Sorry, please continue.
I agree. I agree. Please, like let uh, let those tangents out whenever they come up. They're gold. They're good. um, yeah. Where was I there?
You were talking about the way that sometimes you would hurt yourself, or um, basically, you were in a place of suppression of
Yeah.
self.
Yeah. So suppression had kind of become a very normal normal way of operating, I suppose. Once I got to high school, I very slowly started skipping more and more often all the way through to grade 12. And prior to high school, or at least the year before high school, I was a superstar student, like in every possible capacity. I was passionate about every subject, and I was passionate about like the other kids at school, and I had a lot of friends, and I I was just I had good relationships with all of my teachers, like talking about subject matter and putting so much work into projects, and um, I really enjoyed school, and uh, you know there were certain shifts that happened in like in my transition to high school that kind of separated me from what was comfortable, and the suppression got stronger, um
Do you want to talk
in
about
the
those shifts?
what was that, sorry?
So do you want to talk about those shifts? What
Sure.
happened? What was the catalyst?
The catalyst, the one major one, or the major period shift I can remember is between grade 8 and 9. I decided to switch schools because my best friend was switching schools, and I decided that good there was enough pros to making a similar switch, that it was time to shake it up or whatever. And I removed myself from a very, very like supported, positive, and familiar environment, and put myself into a very unfamiliar environment. And I got acne all of a sudden, and I was trying to fit in for the first time, because up till that point I had gone to school with many people that I had gone through all of school with to that point. And I started trying to fit in, and I was like flexing my character a lot, and it just and it's not even that it wasn't working, but I just felt so outside of myself doing those things. I stopped caring about school, just as a natural response to trying to fit in. I was spending more energy. I don't even know.
Relationships and acceptance.
You got it.
And
That's
seeking
perfect.
the acceptance.
And that just kind of spiraled into what basically the sidecar to anger became this anxiety. Like they'd like to travel together a lot, uh,
Yeah.
and essentially, like if I wasn't angry, and almost always at myself, then I was really anxious. So it kind of felt like the incoming information was all anger, and the outgoing information was all anxiety.
Because it was anger itself. So you directed it at you.
Right. So I was either, kind of beating myself up verbally, emotionally, or physically, or I was expressing this like deep like fear of being rejected, or not being enough, or being too much, or whatever it was that day. And that anxiety, like actually expressing myself anxiously, became such a terrifying thing that I took the road of just being withdrawn and angry instead. Um, that was kind of how I would sum that transition up. And then high school was just basically like just a dreadful hall of mirrors, walking around all the time feeling like all I'm being seen as is like an anxious kid, and nobody knows that I'm angry. And so I spent my entire high school wearing headphones that I couldn't, even my teachers couldn't get me to take off, like completely infatuated with this girl who kept me at a certain distance all the time, and skipping school because I just like the passion was gone, and I was hurting. So I found my outlet was more appropriate in the gym instead of at school. Now that it was anger, pushing weights around was a lot more alleviating, I guess, than
And it seems like a natural way to expend that type of energy, right? Like it's very almost, I can't say that lifting weights is aggressive, but it kind of is. It's like it's a powerful exercise when you're lifting weights and you're lifting them hard. And I know when I've been mad at different points in my life, running for me, I'd run myself silly, like to the point of complete exhaustion, or I would go punch a bag, or I would go to the gym and lift weights. So I kind of had three outlets, but same idea. You're just pushing really hard to get that out.
Totally. Yeah. And I went through a phase that, like, as I left high school, I had gotten really obsessed with the gym. I had a football coach in high school tell me that I wasn't strong enough, and that broke my heart to the point where, I quit playing sports, and I started working out and looking back now, sometimes I think it's funny, like, oh, I'm going to show you, I'm going to be the strongest guy there ever was.
Right.
I'm not sure if that's what it was entirely, but I did go to the gym, and I became very obsessed. I got a job in a sports supplement store, and I would wake up and have a shake and eat 6 meals in a day with 3 shakes and 2 big bags of vitamins, and I'd work out minimum once a day, and I did that for years, and I got really big, and I got really fit, in certain ways. And the funny thing is, I don't know if I've ever worked harder at anything in my life than I did at that. And I don't remember a single moment of being like just really happy or content during that time. I'm certain that they were in there, but I remember the whole period as a very, like, just sad, miserable period. I didn't like to be seen, and I didn't like to be known. Honestly, like I felt like the truest possible meaning in my life was to live completely privately and work out whatever was going on in me, and do that all with the least amount of exposure as possible.
Probably because you were looking to subconsciously or consciously avoid the rejection or the possibility of rejection.
Yeah,
Right?
that feels very, very appropriate for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's such a curious statement you make when you say, in that whole time, I worked so hard for this, which we do. Sometimes we do things in our lives where we strive so hard because we think this is what we want, but we achieve it and we're never happy.
Yeah. And I feel like for me in the gym was interesting because, the gym's, got this, this interesting kind of progression to it, right? You start working out really hard and you see a lot of results really quickly, and that feels pretty good. But then you get into this hypercritical state of like over analyzing every single tiny detail, and we tend to completely retract the
Benefits.
positive benefits that we're having by like health, and we get instead wrapped up in this like competition game with ourselves about getting better all the time, and like not good enough, and that actually drove me out of the gym inevitably. I pushed so hard for so long because there's no such thing as the right amount of weight to lift. It always had to be more. There wasn't the right thing as like running the fastest mile possible. It always had to be faster. And eventually I worked out, so hard for so long that, my shoulders and my chest muscles like just kind of gave out. I got so tight and I was holding on so much, and, all of the areas that I damaged were actually like right around my heart, which is interesting. My physical damage is all these scars and stretch marks of soft tissue tearing right in my armpits and in my biceps and in my chest muscles. But I pushed so hard that eventually, like it was literally like blowing a gasket. It was like blowing a chakra, kind of like just too much energy, pushing too hard, don't need to do this, and explosion. And eventually,
it's all external.
Yeah, and I had to stop. Working out. Just pushed
So
it.
what took you from self-deprivation or self-deprecating to where you are now? Because you are such a different person now. Like such a different person. You're such a delight to be around. Your energy is so beautiful.
Oh, you're lovely. Thanks, man. Yeah, it's been quite a journey, and there's, I think, the important part to highlight in the story is that while all of that I was just telling you was going on, while all of that like dark night of the soul was going on, there was also another story kind of taking place in my life that was quietly kind of going through the birthing process into its maturity, and that was my meditation practice and my mentorship that I happened upon with a beautiful woman that taught me many many things.
How
And
old were you when she came in?
I was 16 years old when I met her, and it was kind of just like serendipitous. I was at a stage where conversations between my mother and I just didn't go anywhere, and so she was. I'm sure, in looking back, she was trying to find ways to reach out to me because obviously I was struggling. And so one day she just said, "Matt, I met this woman, and I think you'd get on well." And so she sent me to see her, and I walked into her office, and she, the energy in her office was like very apparent. Like it was like walking through a portal. And there's
Palpable.
crystals everywhere, and a massage table, and interesting smells, and all kinds of things. And she was very warm, very very lovely, and she basically sized me up in 5 minutes and like described in a very subtle way what she could see, which was all of these wounds that I thought were concealed.
Right.
Or like, and some of them I thought were so concealed that I forgot that they even existed. And she saw them all right there, just like in 5 minutes. And I was very, threatened, I guess, at first, and moved by this. But I was more moved than threatened, and so I like had to go back and see her, and that was the beginning of like a very long relationship that I still have to this day, but one that set me on a journey of 12 years of studying with her one on one, and I use study pretty loosely because we did many many things together. But essentially, she started giving me tools to start engaging again with this energy that was now just anger and anxiety. That was like all that was left, and it was eating me alive. And she started giving me ways to transmute it, to transform it,
To
to
bring it
approach.
back to its normal state.
Yeah, you got it. So
Yeah.
it was lots of meditation, lots of like therapy, you could say, for sure, but in a motherly kind of way. She attuned me to the Reiki symbols, and I got my master's in Reiki by 18. And we just studied a lot of concepts together, and she gave me a lot of stuff to go home and practice. And when I met her, I started finding things that I enjoyed a lot. Like they made my spirit, my soul, my heart very happy. So amidst the darkness that was going to school, or seeing this girl that I loved who wouldn't like
Return it.
right,
Right.
or being able to express myself amidst all of that, I could go home and like hover my hand over my body and feel this connection, this electricity, and be like, "Whoa, that's fascinating." Uh, or
That's
I
so
could,
cool.
so cool, right? It was really really neat, and I didn't have to tell anybody about that. And that became like just for me. And
Oh, it was a secret.
yeah, it was for a long time, I would say, for quite a long time. And, I used to go on walks in Boness Park, and
Beautiful
um,
there.
bring a doobie or something, or not, and just like go walking, especially if it was pouring rain. I would go walk, and I'd sit or lie down underneath a thunderstorm for 4 hours until 4 in the morning. Um, just as like a teenager, just hung out outside for a long time, and then I'd write about it. And so I had this other practice that was developing as I was going through all of this tormenting stuff. Those that started to litter itself into my life deeper and deeper.
Well,
And
you
so,
had this juxtaposition because you had one side that was building an incredible practice with a great mentor,
mhm,
a practice of self and understanding and digging into the internal. But then your external was still very ego, like heavy in ego. But again, I see this very much from um, a brain development standpoint. You were still young, and until we are in our 20s, so for most girls, it's between the age of 23 to 25, the brain is fully developed. And for boys, it's between the age of 24 to 26 that the
Hmm.
brain is fully developed. And now they're saying maybe another 2 years onto that due to technology and the advancements we have with that. It's actually stalling brain development. How
Interesting.
awesome is that? Yep. But
Hmm.
your brain isn't fully developed. All your frontal lobe, all your logical responses aren't fully developed until you are at that age. So I can understand why there would be this juxtaposition in your life, but I find it truly fascinating that you literally had like this duality,
Yeah,
such extremes.
it was. Yeah, it was very extreme. And it was necessary, I think, because the part that was suppressed was getting so extreme that like if I didn't find like I'm certain that if I didn't find another outlet like the meditation practices and the esoteric exploring, I would have like just exploded, like completely utterly
Right.
destroyed myself. um, so so that was a very, it's, especially looking back, it's very healing for me to even look back as if there was always like there's proof of this wisdom that was always there, that knew even in my most determined sadness, um, still there was that wisdom that knew like this will help, this will heal, this, like it might take a long time, but like this will give you something to stand on. And then when I went through the whole gym thing and eventually like blew myself out and literally got to the point where my posture was so misaligned, that I couldn't stand or sit very well, and I had to see a chiropractor and I had to do some rehabilitation. um, all that I had left at that point, all that I had left was these practices, because like otherwise my whole life was about the gym, like my whole life, everything from my
Right.
job to the people I spent time with to the things I put in my body to the time I went to bed, like it was all for the gym. And then when that fell away and I watched like all of these quote unquote results like deflate out of my body like a balloon,
Right.
all I had left were these, meditations and these journaling exercises and these, big esoteric questions to contemplate, which served my observation really well. Because if I had, a thought that I was given to ponder, about, maybe the consciousness of humanity, to be vague, I could like just be, I could be anywhere and
Right.
watch people, or I could look at a tree for a minute straight and wonder if the thoughts that came up in my mind were coming from that tree or not, and how could I tell? And I just got really wrapped up into this world that as soon as I dropped the facade, which was this gym, I was just very, very passionately reconnected to this creative force that had come back to me in a different way, than it used to. I'm still reaching for my artisan toolbox, today, trying to reclaim my childhood artsy vibration, but it's fun. Um, but yeah, so I had these practices, and they were just in my life already, so I didn't have to find them. Right, I could just keep doing what I was doing and lean into it more because what I had been leaning into was stripped away.
Right. Did you find that you were fighting that at some point? Like, okay, so you're talking about having these moments of contemplation and um, the journaling and things like that. Um, but you also had this external struggle going on. Did you find that you were at times fighting the journaling, fighting the meditation, that you didn't want to do it, and then you just like, oh yeah, I guess I'll do it, but it was more just kind of fighting that internally?
Yeah, for sure. I think even now. like knowing very well and very clearly what serves me, what allows me to be in my highest. Even now, there's still that struggle that comes up. And I think, being in the, doing some of this meditation yoga for a living now,
Right.
I see that in most everybody. There's this struggle to like feed ourselves what's truly nourishing all the time.
Which makes us feel great. It's like people who are like, oh, I don't want to go to the gym. But then once you're there, you feel awesome and you're happy you're there and it's good. And I find even though I know these practices inside and out, I know what feeds me. I know exactly how to be in self instead of in ego. I know these things, but there are moments I just get so caught up and I'm like, no, I really don't feel like meditating today. I don't feel like working out today. I don't feel like this. I don't feel like that. And I just get so stuck in the garbage,
Right.
even though I know better. And I
Yeah.
know better.
Yeah.
Right. I know better.
Yeah, it's a fascinating like trait, right? Or like characteristic of like being a human. But
Yeah.
because and to that extent, I think like that which nourishes us for reasons, and sometimes like remembering what those reasons are is important as well. So sometimes I think we'll put ourselves in the muck, put ourselves in the shit, just so that the nourishment is that rich when it comes again, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
It's like I have to experience some darkness to experience some light. It's the two sides, the yin yang, right?
right.
Without one, you don't really truly experience the other. It's the duality of life.
Absolutely. And I think to further that point, like one creates the other as well.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the big pivotal message of like my whole story, I think, is that, as you can go into the deepest, darkest space, but all you're actually going to find there is the place where the light comes from.
That's right.
No matter how deep or dark you go, right? There's
Yep.
nowhere else that light comes from than that place.
It's totally true. It's totally true. In our darkest moments, we find light.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's all there is left to find. If you want to test the theory to the utmost, then you're going to have to go to the darkest possible place, but still that's all there will be left. That's all that there will be left for you to find is light. And you can kind of vanquish everything in your life. You could destroy everything in your life and shroud it up in a shadow if that's what it takes until there's only light left. But that's what's there.
It's fascinating when you think about people's rock bottoms and how they're different for everybody and what that rock bottom is. That rock bottom is the darkest places for them.
Mm.
And in those darkest moments, that's when we start to we make choice and we say, no, I don't want this anymore. I'm done with this. I'm done with this lesson. And the interesting thing is they're all lessons. But once we make that choice, that shift happens so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
It happens so quickly. And yeah, we're going to have moments when we're pulled back into it or drawn back to, are you sure you've learned this lesson?
Right.
But that rock bottom truly becomes that darkest moment for whatever that experience is. And then we make the choice and we move forward. And it is exhilarating. Everything within you lights up again once you've hit that bottom, whatever it is for you.
Right.
So your bottom hits at this stage where, when did your bottom hit?
Oh, my bottom.
It would have been after the gym. So you've broken your body.
Yeah,
You're now not capable.
that was pretty tough for sure. Hard for me to like pinpoint a specific moment as much. Um, but certainly I felt like my bottom was like an extended period of time. And um, in many ways I feel like bottom was just a state of mind. It wasn't actually an event per se, because I look at like the things that I struggled with mightily when I was younger, and I still experience all of those kinds of things. Like those same kinds of struggles and tests and challenges come up all the time. Like, if I was going to have my rock bottom back then, like I very well could experience rock bottom today based on what I'm going through now, because there's difficulties.
Right.
But then it was just this mindset, and it was kind of this collective period. I think I was kind of going through my bottom while I was at the gym in a lot of ways. Like the bottom might have been when I blew my circuits open, which is something that like I wear on my chest now. Like it's just
Right.
there. It
It's your
sits
life reminder.
big time, big time. And it was kind of like this big sacrifice in a way too. Like there was things that, I just like eventually I kind of gave up for the sake of this anger or whatever. And that was the cost. That was the bottom. It's like, hey, if you keep pushing, if you keep pushing, if you keep pushing, and it's like, no, I'm going to push, I'm going to push, I'm going to push. And then eventually, boom. And, that process has happened in different ways in different parts of my life again. But the pattern is something to recognize. And I think rock bottom is in many ways, it is a pattern, and some people will move through the waves of highs and lows, much slower than others. Some people maybe navigate it so masterfully that, they only hit rock bottom once and then they just slowly ascend all the way, the rest of the way.
I don't know if you ascend, because there's definitely going to be challenges in life, and life sends events, right? Things happen, but
it's
it's
like,
how we navigate through them. And
yeah,
maybe with some experience or the ability to really reflect on those, we navigate those events much better and much more beneficial to us. So it seems like it's ascension, but really it's just us navigating better
right. Absolutely.
with a wisdom instead of a push or a resistance.
Yeah. Yeah, indeed. And just a little bit of that surrender in there,
Yep.
and trust in the universe, trust that things are organized in a way that is helpful for you. um,
And
so,
that this is going to play out and tomorrow will be a different day, because every day
yeah,
is a different day.
and inevitably so. It always is, right? So that's kind of the spice of life right there.
It's such I just had this weird thought that kind of popped in with this. It's reminds me of when my dog died. Okay, so I know this seems really ridiculous, but my dog dies a couple of years ago. We put her down, and it's the most miserable event for me ever. I've never experienced grieving like that in my entire life. It was like grieving a child. I had her from the moment we picked her up from the breeder to the moment we put her down, and it was horrible that day and many days after. And I remember thinking, how does the world just keep going on? Like, she was never here. Like, it doesn't matter. That was one of my first thoughts, which is completely irrational. But it's the same thing when we're experiencing these moments and we think that life just won't continue, or how can this get better, or but tomorrow comes and it's a different day, and it brings different opportunities and different people and different greatness to it if we're open to it. But in the beginning, when I was dealing with the death of my dog, again, it sounds so funny because it's a pet, but she was very significant in our life. I couldn't wrap my head around how life continued without her. And that's what we get stuck in when we're stuck in, or not surrendering to, or not, or we're just resisting whatever experience we're having in that moment. We're just stuck thinking that nothing transpires beyond this event.
Right.
We're just too close to it, instead of being able to remove ourselves at least a little bit and go, oh, yeah, life continues around us. There's other opportunities. This isn't the worst thing in the world. We can, like, I'm still here. I'm still breathing. I still have a roof over my head, and I can move on and do something else.
Right. And I think, especially something like death, it really paints like a visceral picture for us, like one that we can feel in our body and in our heart and in our mind, of the transient nature of everything, right? Like,
Right.
because it becomes, a strong reference point. There's this energy, this presence that was there, and that presence, that that dog in this case, like
Yeah.
came out of nowhere, right? Like, I mean, there was just a point before you guys met where the dog didn't exist. It came out of nothing, like thin
Right.
air, poof, right into your life. And it
Yep.
was there and it changed everything, and it became integrated into your culture as a person and a family. And then in the
And
same
daily
way,
existence.
just
Yes.
like a wave of sound passing through the air, poof, she was gone. But like now in reflection, you recognize she was always with you, always, 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 because you've been changed and
Yes.
transcendent through time, right? There's not a single instant of your life that she is not a relevant part of now, including the part before she even existed.
And she taught me a lot in that experience, actually. I learned a lot about our time here and what
Hmm.
it means and how we treat others. And because, of course, when you go through grieving, one of the first things you think is, could I have been better to you? Did I give you what I should have or could have? That was literally my first struggle with her death was, could I have done better here? And again, it's the same thing with these events that we experience. We struggle with, could I be doing better? Of course we can, but of course we are always doing what we can in that moment. We are. What we're capable of in a moment isn't always our best, but it's our best in that moment,
Hmm.
right? So I have so much strength or not in that moment. So I can bring so much or I can't in that moment because it's where I'm at.
Right.
And can we step up if we're aware enough? Sometimes we can. There's that split second of the observer saying, do I really want to do this? Can I really do this? Can I push forward, or can I step up into this
Hmm.
or not?
Right.
And that's just an awareness.
Absolutely.
So you hit your rock bottom ish. And then you have catapulted yourself into meditation and yoga, and this is now what you teach. This is the life you live, and you guide others through their own, um, I guess, dark waters.
Yeah, you could say that for sure. And um, a continual like learning experience for me too, right? Like it's a pretty beautiful gift to be regarded as a teacher. I've certainly grown to respect more than anything the teacher that I find in every other living being or everything. So to be able to be regarded as a teacher is a feel very privileged and honored to do that. But it's more than anything else. It's a testament to this like willingness that I had to foster to um, essentially take all of that anxiety that was coming out and like make the best of it. Recognizing that having all of that suppressed and made me feel angry, and it made me feel pressured, and it made me feel like really really destructive and
And anxious and not you.
right. So I went through a period of time where I'm like learning basically at 20, 26, 27 years old, whatever it is, but like learning how to express myself for the first time, basically is what it felt like. um,
Instead of worrying so much about pleasing others.
right. And it is a returning, right? Like, I mean,
Yep.
you'll never make a person more happy in your presence than when you're able to be like your child with, like it's such a beautiful thing because there's no words to describe it. Like, people can't critique you for being your inner child or for bringing that same level of freedom and expression out. It's just demonstrative of spirit or whatever you want to call it. So certainly there was just this almost this precipice, right? I'm either going to jump off and just start expressing it
Right.
for better or worse, or I'm going to keep going through this cycle and probably end up causing myself and the people around me a lot of pain.
Right. it's at that stage, it's choice. It's yeah, you like it's the precipice and you're like, do I do this or do I not?
Yeah,
It's choice. And
absolutely.
sometimes, and it's not like these choices are easy for us.
Yeah, and sometimes I think like the choice itself, like the one that is gonna really win the day. That
Yeah.
is easy, but then making it is like the harder part, or at least a whole
Yep.
nother ball game, right?
Yep. It's taking the step. So, okay, I made this choice. I'm totally going to do this, but
Yeah,
now I got to do this.
that gets like not I don't want to say addicting, but like making that choice
Yep.
uh, is like it definitely becomes a way of life after a little while, right? Like once you start breaking down those boundaries and
Yep. And pushing the boundaries and
right,
comfort zones. Hmm.
totally. Once you've got that courage to be vulnerable, it becomes very like exponentially powerful. Uh,
Yeah, I joke around often. I don't know if I told you about opening up shit gifts, gifts wrapped in shit paper.
I don't think so. No, I haven't heard this.
I think I'm going to do a podcast on this, the gifts wrapped in shit paper. But basically, the sum of this is that we are given gifts all the time. And those gifts sometimes are really easy and they're just wrapped really pretty. And then we have gifts that are wrapped in shit paper. And those gifts are the really hard ones. Those are the ones we don't want to touch because they smell bad, they look bad, they're everything about them is repulsive.
Right,
Those are the gifts of us. Those are the biggest, most important gifts. And when you first learn to open them, and it's taking these steps, right? In the beginning, it's really not fun. It seems really hard. But then once you learn how to open one, two, and you get into your third, you're running, you're charging for those gifts because those
right.
are the biggest gifts of us. And that's us in acceptance of who we are without the concern or worry of what anybody else thinks. And once you hit that stage, you are gifting other people. You
Mm-hmm.
gift them the beauty of who you are, and authenticity is magic
That's
to
right.
people around you.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
You like my gifts wrapped in shit paper?
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's you should do a podcast on that.
Yeah, gifts wrapped in shit paper.
Mhm.
So I love that you teach meditation and that you teach yoga. I didn't know that you were a Reiki master. Do you actually practice that?
I do. I practice mostly on plants and animals, and just kind of offering that to them, kind of unconditionally. And then, as far as practicing with people, I've kind of reserved it a little bit. I would say I definitely have have an intimate group of people that know that I offer this, and within those boundaries, I share it. Uh, and I've got I know several just very beautiful, powerful Reiki healers, and I love working with them. So on occasion, I definitely do, um, but it feels to me Reiki. I feel the language very very strongly. And I love kind of embracing that as an actual exchange of energy between any two bodies of any kind.
Yep.
Um, but it doesn't feel like that's my medicine to give in that way.
Yep.
And especially like in a city like this too, it's so beautiful to see the community building itself in this way around the light of the gifts that are all shared. I've spent so much time with such profoundly powerful Reiki healers that I'm very happy to kind of like keep offering the gifts that my community has asked me to give, and that I'm just in relationship with. And Reiki is something that I would say is maybe a little more private for me.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Hmm.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and certainly, like I actually just got a massage table, so I've definitely been planning to at the very least, because I've been doing a lot more private mentorship with people in my field recently, that I've been preparing to offer more Reiki than I have been. Um, I think I was just waiting for the the stage to be set appropriately for that. But yeah, so yeah, go Reiki. Do love it.
So speaking of the empowering, the disempowerments, you found your way to empower yourself, obviously through the journey and practices of meditation, which your mentor kind of brought you down that path, which is amazing. And then, and yoga, correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yes, yes. Empower the disempowerments, creative outlets for energy, and in healthy ways we can do it instead of in destructive ways we can suppress it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm really, really glad. Do you actually, I want to ask, do you still, like, do you find yourself singing, doing art, all the things that you were doing as a kid that you were no longer, like you found yourself not doing, that were actually really making you quite miserable? Do you find you're doing those again?
Yeah, in a big way. Some of them are still maybe, like come up against certain blocks. I can't. I feel it's very difficult to just freely wield certain tools. But I've been singing a lot more, especially recently in the last few months. Lots and lots of singing. I've been bringing that to class, and I've been a part of some ceremonial work, just community building in yoga studios with my partner, and in that ceremony space, I feel very, very empowered to sing. So I've been sharing a lot of that, and then along with that has come this playing instruments, and I've been blessed this year. I've been given so many instruments as gifts, and I'm even looking around my house now, and I'm like, how did I acquire this many drums? Like, what happened? What does this mean? So there's
Coming
lots
circle.
and lots of tools. Writing has always been even during the dark suppression, my writing survived and has always been a really big part of my even just my totem, like being able to recognize that I'm still here as long as I can write. So I kind of dip in and out of that pool, but when I'm in, I write a lot. Yeah, I have found a lot of access to creativity again. Certainly could even say it's just become the way that I've been living my life, is just from one creative outlet to the next. And I just happen to share that in different ways at different places at different times. That's kind of how I look at what I'm doing now.
Expression. And I find it absolutely incredible that when you really look back at your childhood and the things that really lit you up as a kid, it's funny how that translates into your adult life, into purpose. People are always saying, well, I don't know what my purpose is, or I'm trying to find the meaning of my life, or I'm really unhappy. Look back at your childhood. There's so much to be found there.
True.
There's so much to be found there. And when we look at the things that really excited us as kids, there's a reason it excited us. Like, I was an explorer as a kid. You could not get me to stop making up stories about whatever I found in a park, and I would create a whole story around it, or what this could possibly mean, or where this came from. I was constantly exploring, and I was always exploring people. I found people fascinating. Even from a young age, I was always looking at, why did they do the things they did? And little did I realize in adult life that meant, why does the brain work the way it works?
Right.
But for me as a kid, I was fascinated by people and the exploration of that. But yeah, when we look at our childhood, we discover many things. I sang as a kid also, and I was an artist as a kid. And I find that those moments when I paint or sculpt or sing, which I sing a lot, I sing in my shower all the time, and I sing in my car. I am the worst for this. I will be singing and dancing in my car, pull up to a light, look over, and someone totally busts me. Totally busts me. And they start laughing. Pardon?
Isn't that the best though?
Yes, because it's totally one of those moments when I'm like, I don't care. I just gave you a gift because I took you out of whatever you were having an experience of the day, right? It could have been, I'm frustrated, I'm having a shitty day, I could be having a good day, but I just added a whole bunch of happiness to your day because this was so funny and ridiculous that it broke you out of whatever you were experiencing, right?
It's true. Oh yeah.
I love those weird little random gifts that we give people. So now I'm like, I don't care. I get busted all the time.
Yeah, just keep singing, Brandy. Just keep singing. Keep dancing in the car.
Keep dancing in the car. Yeah, I'm just like, I don't care. And people laugh, and it's great. It's great. It is a total little gift that we give. But yeah, singing is fun. And your singing is different. I like the way you sing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I guess you've seen me in full force a little bit there.
Oh, yes, I did. And if you guys could see through these microphones, holy, I contemplated putting up this picture. It's so beautiful, but we're going to use a different one. I can't show you the one I took of Matt at our event. It was super fun though. Let's just say glam rock meets My Little Pony. If that gives you any ideas.
Yeah, that's about, you might have one of the most honest and authentic photos ever taken of me, to be really honest.
Remind me to send those over to you so that you have them. But that's the epitome of creativity in those moments, and absolutely being set on fire with who you are and gifting that to those around you. Because seriously, there was not one person, not one, that didn't appreciate the way that you represented that day. Not one. Like, you just came out, you were this ball of awesome energy, and everyone loved it. How could you not? How can you not fall in love with people who are truly themselves? How can you not?
They do set good examples. That's I guess any time that I'm able to offer that authentically, it's it's like a channeling of the people who've shown me how to do that, right? So
yep.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing to pay forward, that's for sure.
You're honoring them and yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It's win-win.
Win-win-win-win.
Win-win-win-win. Perfect. The way it should be. Always, always, always. And it can be. That's a misconception a lot of people make, is that it can't always be win-win. Yes, it can. Yes, it can. And if it's not, something is slightly askew and just needs tweaking. Or maybe it's the people that have come together and they're just not meant to be doing whatever that is. Right? I find that in business often. If it's not win-win, it's because two people have aligned incorrectly. Like, they have differing viewpoints that don't align. Therefore, it's not the right project, because it should be win-win always, and can be, and successfully. So, Matt, I want to thank you so much for your time that you've given and for sharing your journey and the darker insights into struggles in our journey and what we experience and how we move out of them.
It was my absolute pleasure, Brandy. Thank you for inviting me to chat with you today. Yeah, very, very beautiful, and I love the work that you're doing, and I look forward to connecting with you further and maybe finding some more projects to do together and all that. But yeah,
collaboration, I love it.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Is there anything you want to talk about? And actually, I know there is, so we should talk about it. You have the coolest little organization or project that you're working with, and it's called Cosmic Cartel. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I'd be very happy to. Thank you. So my beautiful girlfriend and I, her name is Jennifer, and we met in a very creative way. We actually, our story is that we fell in love inside of a cave, inside of a mountain, and I was leading a meditation that followed a hike up to a cave mouth, and it was through a cave tour company, and we were 90 meters underground in absolute darkness, and led a meditation. And then this woman started singing a song, and it was beautiful. And the rest is history. Anyway, but together, just so much creative ideas, lots and lots of like infusion in each other, and with almost no effort at all, we birthed this cosmic cartel, which was kind of just a fun excuse for us to do some creative things that we wanted to do, meditate in unique situations like in a cave, or bring live DJs into a yoga studio and talk about serious things, but have very strong communal events. And so basically what the Cosmic Cartel is a growing collective of people who really respect and appreciate each other enough to show up and be vulnerable and try something new more often than not, and kind of just let the experience be a demonstration of what happens when we all come together in our uniqueness. So we typically rent spaces in yoga studios in Calgary, but we are moving beyond Calgary this summer. We've got many invitations to go around. But we like to use some technology like noise canceling wireless headphones, and we do meditations through the headphones. Very popular. And we've been hosting everything from ceremonies with plant medicines to ecstatic dance parties to yoga classes, and then beyond that, we just offer lots of counsel too. We do have lots of conversation. We have lots of stigma breaking events, and we've certainly in less than a year we've hosted 21 events together, and it's basically required no real effort on our part. It's just a flowing expression of us, and it's been beautiful. It lights us both up, and our community has grown very strong in a very short period of time, and it's been beautiful to watch how people have kind of come into their own, and then we get to hear about all the things that they're doing outside of the cartel once they leave, and it's very empowering. So yeah, you can find us on Instagram at Cosmic Cartel YYC, and yeah, we post stuff on Facebook, and you can always kind of find out where our events are at, but we like to keep it a little mysterious too. So
so definitely go check them out, and you can find Matt at what yoga studio? Or
at Yoga and Beyond primarily, and Junction 9 in Inglewood, and I go to Canmore once a week to Wild Heart as well.
And your meditations go through Cosmic Cartel, or is that the only place they can find you?
No, I do a lot of meditations privately, so you can reach out to me personally through my Facebook or through my personal Instagram at Monkey Yogi. But I also represent a company called Modern and Mindful in Calgary. It's about 3 years old, and it's a mobile meditation station. Essentially, we do a lot of work in corporate Calgary. So I have quite a number of weekly sessions. I show up and do corporate meditations with groups from the energy sector to the architectural sector to law firms, and yeah, the list kind of goes on. But yeah, you can find me working with Modern and Mindful as well.
Awesome. Now we know how to connect.
Yeah,
and you. Matt is a delight to connect with.
So are you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being a part of Fear It Goes podcasts and out to our community. I'm sure that we'll find great value in our conversation today.
Thanks, Brandy.
It is always a delight having these conversations with our guests on the show about the experiences they have and how it represents our evolution. So next week, we are going to talk, it's just you and me, babies. We are going to talk about empowering the disempowerments because it's time. We are going to talk about how to take back your power from situations where you gave it up. And you may not have gave it up because you chose to give it up and you went, you know what, it's okay. No. These are the moments when it was taken from you or you just gave it over, and give away a little piece of yourself every time you do it. So we're going to talk about empowering the disempowerments next week. I'm very excited. So my beautiful peeps, you know the drill. Please leave us 5 stars. Leave us a rating. I love bringing great content. So if you have any ideas, come on over to fearitgoes.com/podcasts. Go to the bottom of the page and leave us a comment. Until next week, my beautiful souls, have an absolutely extraordinary week.